We have this story from CNN Business. This is great from last Friday. Starbucks workers at 150 stores go on strike over pride decorations. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. They said that there was no policy to take down pride decorations, and then 150 United Starbucks stores in the United States went on strike on Friday. I think I said about 3,500 employees will be on strike, and I believe we have from the Post-Millennial, Starbucks union boasts they closed 21 locations last weekend in response to the alleged LGBTQ pride decoration ban. I think it's fair to say it's not alleged. The workers at these stores said they weren't allowed to put up decorations. I don't care what corporate is saying. The people are, they're actually protesting. Here's what I think happened. I think Starbucks said outright, we're going to lose a bunch of money, shut it down, and the workers protested. I think that what we're seeing now is, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the Bud Light effect shows get woke, go broke, but also anti-woke equals clicks. And so you're seeing a lot of apolitical people now coming out and being like, oh, yeah, I don't like Bud Light, because they know they're going to get a million hits if they do it. Starbucks was just like, we better get out of this one. Just take it down. And now their employees are revolting. Well, their employees are in revolt.
Absolutely revolting.
Yeah. It is funny how that word goes two directions. No, their employees are in revolt at many locations, because this is what happens. Big corporations know, look, we're in the members only section. We're gonna play the video of the guy doing something in front of children. Like, I got to be very careful. I don't even want to explain it. Spreading himself, and it's a horrifying in public. And I would normally like to challenge YouTube and be like, hey, YouTube, here's a video from Pride in public with children. Certainly you can't have a problem with that, right? But I know that there's a line. We did it before with one video, because I'm like, I don't think YouTube would take this down. They didn't. This one, I'm like, they're going to take it down. There's videos of explicit nudity. And it's like with these books like Genderqueer, when parents tried to read it to their school board meeting, they get banned from it, but the kids are reading it. So, anyway, my point is we'll show that in the members only section. But I think what's happening is when you see an old man, when you see a guy in a diaper and a dog mask running up to your kids, turning around and wiggling his butt at them, parents are starting to go like, hey, hold on there a minute. When you get the video of the guy with the Bugs Bunny mask fully nude and then jumping up and down and shaking his genitals in front of people and their kids at this event, regular people go, yo, hold on there a minute. Then Starbucks comes out and says, we love it. And they go, I ain't going to Starbucks anymore. Mm-hmm. Bud Light is the perfect example of it. Smack down, no longer the top beer in the country, and all these corporations fear it.
It's the hubris, right? It's the pride. Like, they think they can get away with acting in a revolting manner, right? Like, this is actually disgusting behavior that's repulsive to normal, everyday people. It's even repulsive to people that are part of the LGBT community.
That's why it's fracturing. That's why you're getting...
It's fracturing.
Groups like...
Gays Against Groomers and all that.
And then Get the L Out. Quote, Get the L Out, end quote, is the name of an organization. It's lesbians who don't want to be associated with what's going on.
I love it. But
yeah,
we need to see more of that. They're dividing all of our factions, and now it's coming home to roost. And but they can't... There's going to be it's going to continue to get more and more extreme, and there will be more pushbacks. Like, this is going to hurt Starbucks. I don't know how long. I don't know how badly. It's not going to be the Target problem, but I don't get it. I mean, Starbucks is a pretty gay-friendly company. The idea that they're not gay enough is kind of a weird argument.
I don't think any of these companies care. People talk about ESG and CEI or whatever, and I'm like, they just want... Look, when there was no pushback, companies were like, how much will it cost to do a Pride Month thing? It'll cost $5,000 for the decorations. And what's our upside? Oh, we'll be involved in this big celebration, and then we'll maybe see a bump in sales. Now there's pushback. Now they say, yeah, it'll cost you $5,000 to do, and you'll lose $300,000 per location because people will boycott your store. And they're like, pull the decorations. Mm-hmm. They don't actually care. It's all about the path of least resistance. And the fact that regular people are providing resistance, these companies are immediately just changing course.
Mm-hmm. The regular people thing matters a lot. Like I said, I've said this before on the show. I was just in California doing some more ATR stuff last couple of weeks. And some of my friends out there, like, you talk to them about this stuff and they're like, look, I got kids and I'm a progressive guy and stuff, but man, that ain't right. but I don't want to do this. And they really understood the ramifications of having, their kids be exposed to this stuff. And I think that the average person is rejecting it out of hand. I think that the normal people that are, again, have maybe 15, 20 minutes a week for politics. That's all they spend on knowing what's going on in the world. Maybe they see some memes that their friends send, and then they'll listen to, the news for 15 minutes in the evening or whatever, or in the morning. Those people are the ones that are like, yo, I don't like the idea of the teacher wanting my child to transition.
I watched The Passion of the Christ for the first time last night.
Wow. I heard it was gruesome.
It is. It's really. And the beginning I thought was a little slow, and then it actually got really, really good. It's not, I wouldn't describe it as explicitly religious. I mean, obviously it is, but what I mean is it's political. The reason I bring this up is someone's just mentioned, because of all this, there's going to be a far right backlash. And then I saw that, I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I did just watch The Passion for the first time ever. Because I was curious. I'm like, I grew up Catholic, not Christian, but I do now want to understand more so what the points that are being made. So I did watch it, and it's actually pretty good. I do think there needs to be a movie for the average person. This one was in Aramaic, Hebrew, and Latin with subtitles. Hard to watch. But the reason I bring it up is I learned a lot that I didn't know, even having gone to Catholic school, that changed my perspective on some of these issues. And I think it is partly due to what we are seeing from the left, that I was open to having watched a movie like that. Again, I'm not a Christian. I do believe in God. I don't believe in the Catholic Church or anything like that. But it got me watching this and learning about Pontius Pilate and what was the name? The murderer who was released and all this stuff. Barabbas and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Things I didn't know, that, the Pontius was like, I can release one person, Jesus or Barabbas, the murderer. And they're like, release the murderer. Like, that's how much they hated him.
So you went to Catholic school and they didn't cover this?
Nope.
That is incredible.
But that may be why there's a break in religion in this country, for sure.
Of course.
They said they filled the crowd with people that were like, get Jesus. I think they had false flag. I think they had like feds in the crowd.
No, that's right.
They were like,
Look, I don't want to talk. I'm not trying to bring this up so we can talk about religion.
Yeah.
My point was simply, I do believe there will be a pendulum swing towards the right because of this. I think what's happening now is people are starting to ask questions of how to get to the point where there are pedophiles shaking their genitals in front of children and thrusting towards them while they watch. And it's like, well, I don't think it completely correlates with religion, but the pendulum will swing. People will look back at where we were 10 years ago and say, what were we doing back then? It's like, oh, okay, we had standards. The standards were like this. You're going to hear arguments from people who are Christian, who are Catholic, and they're going to say, here's what we believe and why we oppose it. And then you're going to get regular moms and dads who are like, what do I have to do to stop the man from gyrating nude in front of my children?
Yep.
And the left is going to say, you're a bigot. And the right is going to say, church is this way.
There's already people that are starting to talk about, Christian nationalism and stuff. And that's the too far swing back to the right. And like people like James Lindsay, thankfully, are already like looking for ways to push back against it, because there is going to be a reaction from the right. There's way more people going to church now than there were probably 5 years ago. There's way more young people converting or rediscovering religion in response to what they're seeing as what they would consider perversion or whatever, or what's the word they like to use? Deviancy or whatever. But it's something that liberals, and again, normal liberals, not progressives, it's something that liberals have to be aware of and have to be concerned with, because you don't want to allow the government to have too much influence by the Christian right. Like, a liberal society can make room for the Christian right. It can make room for progressives. It can make room for Muslims. It can make room for everybody if you have a liberal society that doesn't favor one ideology. Right now, our liberal society is heavily influenced and heavily favors progressive ideology. And I think it's really important to not allow the pendulum to swing back. And I know if Seamus were here, he'd be screaming at me, but I really do think that it's important to not let the pendulum swing back too far. And
Swing back a little bit.
Yes, definitely
You know
back.
what I mean?
Well,
Bit.
to the point where we're not
But not
chopping
like-
genitals off.
Of little kids. Isn't it funny though that it was the kids, like they couldn't avoid going the kids route? because that's, I think, where it all shifted, was when the American people saw just how much was aimed at our kids.
There's two
right in
reasons.
schools and on TV and just all of this stuff, the surgeries, all that stuff. The kids were the final straw. It started kind of with the women's sports issue, right? Like that was where you first started to see a big pushback.
They had to go for the kids.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked about quite a bit, the birth rates among those of the liberal worldview are substantially lower than those of conservatives. And so the saying goes, socialists don't have kids, they have yours, but it's not working. The parental rights and education stuff, the reason why Emma had to defend genderqueer and this book is gay is because the left needs to indoctrinate kids and break them from their families. Yep. Grooming is one way to do it. Here's what happens. They need to create a rift between parents and kids to such a degree that the kids run away from home. It really is a crazy thing, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the things we talked about on the Culture War podcast was desistance rates. If a child is gender dysphoric, desistance is when they stop being dysphoric. And there have been a couple studies that we've cited. These are the cited studies as it pertains to desistance. 61 to 95, or is it 98%?
I think it's like 96, or it's around there. It's in the high 90s.
90%. So let's say the lowest number, 61% of children suffering gender dysphoria who receive no intervention desist. That is the majority. If we're trying to do the maximum amount of good, taking a utilitarian perspective, well, then we would lean towards not intervening and giving medical treatment or sex changes to kids. She advocated for it, despite the fact it would result in more suicide and more depression. Mm-hmm. Why? It's the only way they can get new recruits to their cult. If children are raised by conservative parents in conservative households and conservative communities, those kids will be conservative. They need to find a way to rip those kids from the parents, and they found a way. So if you look at it this way, if 61% of kids desist with no intervention and they go on to lead normal lives, that would mean the suicidal ideation drops dramatically with no intervention. If you intervene, they say that detransition is almost non-existent among those that are put on puberty blockers. However, going from the natural rates of desistance and looking at the percentage of trans people who commit suicide, which is sad and horrifying. We don't want that to happen. If they take 10 kids who are gender dysphoric, and on the high end, 9 out of 10 will desist. That means they are taking 9 kids and increasing the risk of suicide among those kids by something like 50%. Mm-hmm. If they do nothing, those 9 kids will not see an increased suicide rate because there's an increased suicide rate amongst people who are gender dysphoric. So when they advocate for giving intervention to kids who would otherwise be better, they are advocating for increasing the risk to suicide. That's why my view is we should not be doing this. I don't care what the AMA says or whatever. But again, the point is, it doesn't matter to them because they need to find a way to rip kids from their families.
Both Stalin and Hitler made comments about if you get control of the children, it doesn't matter what the parents think. It's something that is baked into socialist ideology because they want to change society. They don't like the liberal society that we live in, and unhappy people can be made into revolutionaries. Happy people that have happy families, they are not looking to revolt. So the left, the revolutionary left, unquestionably wants miserable people with destroyed lives so that way they can make them into activists. Happy people don't revolt. You're not going to get a revolution when most people are happy. That's the biggest problem that Herbert Marcuse found with capitalism. He was like, look, capitalism delivers the goods. So we have to find other unhappy people because capitalism has made the proletariat mostly happy, mostly successful. They have a good life. So.
Tim, can I reiterate something that your whole point about them ripping the kids away from the parents, that is the entire point.
Yep.
And you need to look no further than their next steps that they're already working towards, right? So like the last year and a half, 2 years, we've gotten 19 states to ban these treatments and puberty blockers for kids. 19, right? We need all 50. We
Child
need
sex changes.
Child sex changes. Where the blue states are going now, because they know the desistance rates, what they're doing is they're doing trans trafficking bills. Right. Where basically if the kid, if you're on vacation, right, and you're in Washington State, California, or Minnesota now, and you are there and your kid calls CPS or whatever, calls the cops, the state can actually take your kids away from you and put you into foster care.
It's worse than that. Your 13-year-old kid is surfing on the internet and goes on TikTok, gets exposed to the likes of Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney advocates these children drink alcohol. Haha, it's so much fun. Drink beer. Beer is fun. Advocates for a lot of these ideas. The kid gets confused. The kid says, I can't talk to my parents because people online are telling me that my parents will get mad at me. Then someone messages them and says, if you want, I can drive you to Washington. Stranger on the internet drives the kid to Washington and says, we saved them. And the state says, yup, you sure did. An internet stranger can kidnap your child, have them sterilized in another state, and that state says it's illegal.
Yep.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.